goes for me? How's it hanging? How's it happen? You guys know this is Kevin from the Chord Progression Podcast. The podcast Rolling Stone Magazine describes as the one that initiates profound discussions with rock and metal artists, allowing fans to discover the creative workflow of their favorite musicians and understand the factors that make the band succeed or fall from fame. We are also sponsored by Dark Fusion Systems, the best for your custom compute needs. Get $100 off your Intellibles. Go to CVPod at darkfusionsystems.com. Make sure the podcast below. Let's go to our feature presentation. I'm just going to say it. We have Ben from Whitechapel on the podcast today. The band's brand new album, Hymns of Dissonance, comes out on March 7th. Not only do we go through this one pretty quickly, but we talk about how this record is the perfect amalgamation of the heaviness that is This Is Exile, that is the vastness of sound that the Valley and Kin showed, and how this might be the best overall, like, full encompassing sound that Whitechapel has come up with. Is this an album of the year contender for me? Yes. Enough making you wait for this one. Let's get into it. Let's go! Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, listeners of the Chord Progression Podcast. This year we're going big, we're going heavy, and this band is probably going to be going the biggest and heaviest they've ever gone, and trust me, it is absolutely incredible. Back in 2019, they released a fantastic album called The Valley. In 2020, they released a fantastic album called Kin, and in 2025, they're coming with a brand new album called Hymns of Dissonance. Is this album going to be that, like, album that completes the 3 straight in a row fantastic album cycle? I've listened to the entire thing, and I can guarantee you, by talking to this guy, and after listening through it, it's an absolute yes. So please welcome Ben from the band Whitechapel, the podcast. So Ben, welcome to the Chord Progression Podcast.
Hey, Kevin, thanks for having me, man. Thanks for the kind words about the album, and yeah, glad it's resonating.
Oh, dude, I listened to the 2 singles, and I'm like, this is nuts that are out so far by the time I'm recording this. Listen to the whole entire thing, and I'm sitting here thinking, my God, this album is going to make people go absolutely manically mental when they hear it, but in the best way possible. So you guys hit on something incredible with this one.
Awesome. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think there's a bunch of deeper cuts on the album that that are my personal favorites that haven't been, released yet. But yeah, I'm glad you got to hear the whole thing and see, what we were really aiming for.
Yeah, because I've been trying to describe it to a couple people already, because I've got a chance to. They're like, what is it like? I'm like, they're like, is it as good as This Is Exile? I'm like, take the heaviness of This Is Exile and take the absolute perfection songwriting from the Valley and Kin and put them together, and this is what you have. And everyone's just like, okay, we can't wait for this thing to come out. Can it come out right now? We got to listen to this bad boy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a great way to describe it, because, we couldn't have written this record back in 2008. We needed the experience and the understanding of, all those years of releasing records and experimentation, in order to, kind of reach that form that we got on this record. So yeah, that's I like that comparison you said.
Oh, well, you're very, if you want to keep using that comparison, absolutely go for it. But when it came to writing this record, especially looking through, the press release I've seen for it, the bio I've seen for it, it's said to be trying to write your heaviest record to date. What was the reason behind going this heavy on this record? Trying to go back to some of the stuff that you did, originally with This Is Exile. So what was the idea behind that?
It's more of like a challenge. We set challenges for ourselves. With the Valley and Kin, we tried to, get real progressive, just make a big, widen our spectrum of sound, and try to pull it off with, class. And, that was the challenge for those records. And this challenge is just to kind of get back to the roots of where we started and try to write our heaviest album to date, just with the experience we have now and just sort of that competitive drive we have now. We had a lot of that drive at the beginning of the band too, with just it was a big scene coming up, and there's a lot of great bands out there at the time, and there's a lot of great bands now, and we're really competitive people. So just that kind of keeps a deep heat going, in the creative, and just the in that sort of headspace. It keeps you fired up, and just ready to prove something. We've always been a band that had to prove something, for better or worse. I don't know if that's a good character trait, but that's that's what keeps us kind of fired up, and yeah, just all of that.
I would say, well, maybe always having to feel like you had to prove something, especially with that competitiveness where Whitechapel is, and end up creating a lot of these different records to end up going a little bit more of that widening variety of sound with the Valley and Kin. But then when it comes to Hymns of Dissonance, the competitive spirit to try and challenge yourself once again to write something that is absolutely heavy, brutal, but has that more expansive overall sound to it. On top of that, coming out in a time where over the past couple of years, we've seen heavier music get more and more notice and more well known all across the spectrum. We've seen Sorry Prevail come up and rise. We've seen hardcore get even more known, especially with what Knock Loose did in 2024. So it's kind of like the perfect time for you guys to challenge yourselves to try and write something that has the heaviness of the roots of where you guys started, but have the songwriting wideness and absolute beauty that had the last couple of records in there. So when it all comes together, it absolutely matches up everything to be that full amalgamating album that is Whitechapel. And I think you guys absolutely hit it on this one. And there's no song on this that I could be like, I'm not sure if they didn't hit it on this one. No, going through all 10, yeah, I think you guys hit it on every single one of these songs.
Cool, man. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, it kind of feels like we're back in the ring of just within the modern sense of like what people are putting out, and it's and it's our own style. We try to mix a lot of different like genres within one song that I don't know if any new bands can do because they don't have the experience, or they didn't grow up around the time we did, in the early 2000s. There's a lot of great metal coming out, like with like Relapse Records, and just a bunch of like a bunch of Pig Destroyer, Ion Dissonance, Exhumed, just a bunch of those old bands that I think we take a lot of influence from that. That's kind of in our blood, and we could kind of, when we're together writing, we could pull those sort of elements and just tons of different elements to make our own sound. So yeah, really grateful to be able to keep doing this.
I'll say, you can easily tell that is coming through too in the music. You take a look at the two singles specifically with Visceral Wretch and Hymns of Dissonance, and it all comes together, and you really see that expanding style of just different sounds within metal. And you're seeing different guitar licks and different guitar riffs and how they're showing off these different capacities within the song. And as you go through the rest of it too, I thought especially the guitar work on this whole entire album really amplified that wider range of what Whitechapel can actually really be, whether it's something that's going to be having more of a shred feel to it that absolutely brings forward this faster paced visceral feel, or something that just gets heavy and nasty and gritty all over the place. No matter what way you guys went about it, I thought that was one piece that was fantastic. And my favorite song that had that on there is track number 3 with Diabolical Slumber. That had some of the best guitar work, I think, on the entire album, and it just stood out to me in a completely different way.
Oh, that's great to hear. Yeah, I love that song. That's that's a great song. I can't wait to play that one live. But it's like we like music that kind of sounds like unhinged, a little like could kind of fall apart at any moment, and music that doesn't sound like too scholarly, especially with like my guitar solos and stuff. I don't want to just like play them just to show off. I mean, it has to have feeling, but there's a certain amount of practice that goes into it, that you want to sound like you do this for a living. So but yeah, that's kind of our style, just to kind of just feel unhinged, but just focused at the same time, which is it's a fine line to pull off. So
it's a real fine line. There's not a lot of bands that could pull that off, but you guys doing it, especially trying to pull this off in the way you're doing it right now, being a band for about 20 years at this point, there's not many bands that could get to that point and then come out with a record that is not only this heavy, but also this dynamic at the same time. It speaks to have those guitar parts in there, because it does show a little bit more of this like professional side, where it's not just, completely going all over the place, but at the same time, not just trying to sound as heavy as possible. given the fact that what you're doing, what I saw on these songs, especially Diabolic Slumber, was when it got to be like in a higher pitch, higher register, it just shredded all over the place, but it showed off so much more of this amplification of the feeling of the song, of the sound that was being put forward. And then immediately when you drop back down into something that's heavier, it just absolutely pulls that contrast out of you and just makes you feel that heaviness of it. It's the overall intricacies and the overall, like, you know, just kind of play of the songwriting and just the strategic positioning of it. How you guys did on this album really did work. And I think if you listen to the singles right now, for whoever's listening, definitely you can find that in there, but you're going to still find that in every song as it gets released, either as singles or on album release day.
Oh, thank you for saying that. That's a good way to put it. Like sonically is kind of, see it like a movie, or just like, I don't know, like a picture, or like 3D, see this 3D. And we don't rely on symphonic elements or like electronic elements in the music. It's just like all guitars, it's like, so we just try to keep it that primal element in there, but create the contrast, with, I guess, like octaves, or different different sounding chords, just to make the sound 3D and to sound like lived in. So there's a lot of time that goes into that. Records, all records don't just get written in, short amount of time. It takes layers and layers and layers, and just, that's just from doing this for however long. It starts with an idea, and then that idea it spawns from there. It's like it's like science. It's like a center, you got an atom, and they kind of split up, and but it all has to start with just kind of a spark. And that's all we're chasing. That's what we've been chasing this whole time.
I think you said it best when you said these songs kind of sound like they're 3D in that way, or three-dimensional, where you can really feel all the parts working together, and you can see them from all different angles as well. Plus, with how much music is out there and how many people are trying to make music and put it out on Spotify, we do see a lot of songs that maybe have that two-dimensional feel to it. Rather straightforward, straight line path. That's really all there is to it. Some of them can be really good. Some of them can be really catchy, but some can fall really flat. And when you try and create that 3D sound and have that full amalgamating effect on someone's listening experience, it's tough. You have to create those layers. You have to take the time to know how to do this and really take care of it. And by coming out this record in, 2025, when your first record dropped all the way back, and I want to say it was 2007. Yeah, that overall time frame, the amount of you guys learned, have created together, has led to this point to be what early on, especially for me, is an album of the year contender, if not the album of the year contender in the first quarter of the year.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, that's great to hear. I mean, it's praise, press, good press. We've never really got a lot of deathcore, the genre, got a lot of flack in the early days. So it's like we've kind of always been a band that's kind of been lumped in there. And I don't know if we've ever gotten, really great press, amongst everything. So it's always nice to hear that. And, we've just always kind of done our thing. I guess that comes with, being competitive and something to prove. That's always kept us fired up. But, yeah, that's great to hear. I mean, if publications like it, or it's more about like the fans, like if I feel like our fans are really gonna appreciate this record, because it's it's a new sound from us, but it's like also old, so it's like kind of like the meeting of the two. And it's, I don't know. It's like, it feels like a new beginning, sort of. So I think we're all, the band and the fans are kind of like living in that moment too. So it's, it's a cool thing.
It's going to be a great moment to live in. I think there's a lot of publications that are going to see it the same way I do, and a lot of fans that are going to see it the same way I do. I know I don't have much more time with you, but I got two more questions I want to ask you before we head out. First thing is, I know at the beginning of the episode you said there's a lot of songs that get to be released that you absolutely love on this record. I'm not going to ask you to pick your favorite because that's like picking your favorite child, which is never an easy thing. But out of the songs that have not been released yet, which is the one you're most excited for fans to hear?
I love the song The Abysmal Gospel, because it's just like, I think the construction of it is very cool, and I think it sounds very like it's like a new sort of direction with this for like the heavy on the heavy side of things. Like I think the structure is really cool, the way it goes. It's like it plays like 8 riffs before it like repeats, or it's just like kind of like goes back to that linear sort of songwriting we used to do, but it has a cohesiveness to it that that with our new sound kind of calls for. But I think that song's great, and it's also very punk rock and just like dirty. It reminds me of like just like Dismember in some parts, and like death punk in other parts, like Exhumed, but it also has that flair that we always had in there, and that groove and everything. So that's one of my favorites on the record.
If I didn't already talk about Diabolic Slumber, that was the exact next one I was going to go to, was The Abysmal Gospel. So you and I are kind of on the same page with that. I got one more question before we wrap this up, Ben. It's a question I'll have to ask every artist I bring on the podcast, a way for us to get to know more new music and get to know more about the new music that you love. So I'm going to ask you for 3 examples on this. Can you name me 3 bands or artists that you love that you would love to see more people get into right now?
3 artists that I love. As far as new artists, they haven't been new for a while, but I love the new Blood Incantation record. I think that's great work of progressive death metal with a long form structure, and just the imagination that was put into it. It was amazing. I love some of my favorite one of my favorite metal records of all time is Catatonia Night is the New Day. And it's a super dark, melancholic band from Sweden, started in like the early 90s, was very, very doom death metal at the beginning of their career, but then they kind of switched to more gothic rock, which is, and they pulled it off like perfectly, especially with the Great Cold Distance record. So yeah, Catatonia, and I don't know, I'll have to look on my list, but I look on my Spotify and stuff and just see what I like. But I don't know what. I got some CDs in here. Let's see.
Yeah, pick one of those out. It'll be a first.
Let's see. What do I got? Well, I got Meshuggah Obzin. I got this record by Nocturnus. This record's crazy.
Ooh.
It's like Mike Browning from he used to play drums in Morbid Angel. Started a band after he quit Morbid Angel, and the guitar playing is incredible. Guitarist Mike Davis is like, he used to teach Trey Agzagthoth guitar lessons, and he just like rips all over the record, and it's a crazy record. I can't believe it came out in like 1990 or 89 or something. It's way ahead of its time. But yeah. And as far as like, I guess, I don't know, there's a lot of bands like kind of like from like when we were coming up that were just so inspiring, like Animosity. I remember that record Animal blew my mind whenever it first came out back in the day. I don't know if many people know how amazing that record was, but yeah.
But they should definitely go check it out. But Ben, that's maybe the first time I had someone actually reach into the console, pull out a CD, and be like, this is the one to go with. So that is awesome. And I do want to thank you for taking the time today. I really do appreciate it. 3 things before we head out. First things first, for everybody, Hymns of Dissonance comes out on March 7th. The band Whitechapel going out on tour in March and April. So go to the description of the podcast where it says Find Whitechapel online. Links labels are going to be there for everything for you to find them. Follow them online, so don't miss out. Time for number 2, Ben. Whenever I've guests on the podcast, I enjoy the podcast, I tend to say something as a promise, a way to say thank you. I appreciate it. I wish you support the band in the future. And it's always a when I get to see a band. Not the first time for you guys, it's the next time. Hopefully I'm not completely, beaten up and bloodied from the pit afterwards, but I'm going to try and find my way to find you. I will come and say hi, but the promise is first round's on me.
Oh, right on. I appreciate that.
Oh, you're very welcome. And now, time for number 3. I cannot end this by saying goodbye. That is way too final. I want to thank you for taking the time today. I got to make good on that promise. But beyond that, though, I would love to bring you back on the podcast again in the future to talk more Whitechapel, more things about music, and just anything else we come up with. So this can't be goodbye. This is going to be, I'll see you later.
Sounds great.
Woo! Well, folks, I'm in an interview with Ben from Whitechapel, and now it's time for Kevin's final thoughts. So, I got to interview Whitechapel. How cool is that? But more than that, I love what Ben was talking about when it came to the overall idea of this album and what they were trying to do. They're competitive. They have this chip on their shoulder. They feel like they always have something to prove. And why not try that every single time? And they've done that. They went heavy early on with the Valley and Kin. They came and expanded their sound even further while still keeping it heavy. Now they wanted to keep that overall structure of song and that overall building of song and sound that they established on Kin in the Valley and bring back the absolute heaviness of This Is Exile and make those have a baby together. And this is what you get as Hymns of Dissonance. The overall structure and how he described it as like a 3D song where you're feeling it in all these different aspects absolutely makes sense when you listen to this because it is heavy. Phil's vocals are brutal and they screech and they just get in at you. The drumming is fast, it's rapid, it's plowing through and it keeps that energy going. The guitar work on this is constantly pulling different octaves from highs and lows, different pitches all over the place to really pull you into the song and amplify all those pieces in a comparison, contrast, and storytelling style. The heaviness is going to get you to move and make you want to run through walls. And the absolute songwriting, this is going to make you think, man, this is a record of the year. This is an album of the year. Absolutely. And we're only in March. So we got a long ways to go, but this is definitely going to end up in the top 10 for me at some point by the end of 2025. When it comes to Whitechapel, though, be sure to go down the script of the podcast. They find Whitechapel on links and labels for everything where you can find them on tour in March and April of 2025, where you can stream Hymns of Distance, where you can get merch from them, where you can check them out online, follow them along, all down there for you. Please hit subscribe on the Chord Progression Podcast right down here. Hit follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Hit the like button on the episodes. That'll push us in the algorithm. I want to thank you for that. Also, like us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Links to the podcast below. Thank you, Ben, so much for taking the time today. I also love the fact that, dude, you pulled out a CD from your console to recommend a band. Now that is awesome. So on that note, that's going to be everything. We're listening to the Chord Progression Podcast. My name is Kevin, and you guys know how I end every single one. That's a big, healthy, and hearty. See ya! Yeah.